Hi there, my name is Andy Farquharson and I'm your host on Alternative Exit, the podcast dedicated to educating small business owners about the possibilities, benefits and challenges of transitioning to an employee ownership model. Did you know that there are over 200 million SMEs around the globe with an owner that will be retiring within the next 10 years? Many of these owners will never actually find a buyer for their business, forcing them to close their doors, wreaking havoc on their employees and the communities. There is an alternative. This show will explore different forms of employee ownership and the best practices for a successful transition. Each episode is going to feature interviews with experts on employee ownership, business owners who've successfully made the transition, and consultants who've helped facilitate these changes. Okay, now let's get on with the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Alternative Exit. Today's guest, we have Barry Horner. So Barry is the co-founder and executive chair of Paradigm North, one of the UK's leading financial planning firms. But Barry's also a champion of employee ownership. He led the firm's transition to an EO model or employee ownership trust back in 2019 and now helps others to do the same thing. So Barry brings a whole bunch of financial strategy and value-driven leadership and deep insights into building sustainable, purpose-led businesses with the backbone of employee ownership. Barry, welcome to the Alternative Exit.
Great to be with you, Andy. Thanks for inviting me.
So, Barry, when what made you start thinking about that employee ownership is going to be a good fit for you and your firm?
I guess just a bit of background. So, when we started looking at exit, it was primarily driven by a non-exec that joined us who wanted 3-year sets of accounts, and then he asked for our business plan that he assumed within that would have our succession plan. And it was like, I can give you the business plan and I can give you the accounts, but I can't give you the succession plan. For us, that was probably about 10 years ago. So I'm just about to hit 65. So at 55, it felt like that was a long time out. And did we really need to be focusing on succession? We'd also got a couple, I'd always believed in quite wide share ownership. So we had a number of people, probably up to 20 people in the business who owned shares in the business, and 2 of them.
Out of how many?
At that point, well, I mean, we've had 20 people invest. I mean, we're about 93 now in the firm.
Yeah.
At the time, 10 years ago, it would be like 60. So, you know, a good proportion of the firm had shares or options in the company. And we had 2 people in particular who were looking to retire. So that sort of slightly forced our hand on in terms of they had equity in the business, which they wanted to realize. We had a non-exec who joined us who basically said, you know, it probably is time to start to give some thought to succession, albeit for me, that felt like a good amount of time, you know, to be able to plan for that. And we started the journey, and we have a quarterly offsite board meeting. So every board meeting, Kevin, as it was, the non-exec said, well, why don't we, when we have our sort of informal lunch, we'll just invite a broker in, trade sale, anybody that might want to talk to us about succession for the business. And it was the most depressing process that we went through, to be honest. So we did speak to loads of companies. And frankly, it was about value destruction from my side rather than value creation. It was like we've been the beneficiary of some great people that have joined us who have been part of a small business, been sold into a large business, made loads of promises that have then been reneged upon. And I thought, I just don't want that for us. So we were on this journey that was, I say, pretty demoralizing. And then a broker mentioned, why don't you look at employee ownership? I mean, my style of leadership is sort of the opposite of command and control. It's very collegiate, recognizing we have some unbelievably talented people in the business. So let them get on and do good stuff. That led us down the track of, well, what is employee ownership? How does it work? How can the employees possibly afford to buy the business? And all of, I guess, the stuff you go through in the initial phase. And the more we looked into it, when we actually started to explore it and engage with other professionals who knew much more about employee ownership than we did, it was suddenly like, where's the disadvantage? Where's the downside here? It feels like it's like all a one-way street of good news. So that's what precipitated the change. We let the team know very early that was the plan. So once the board had decided that we were going to go down the road of being employee owned, we probably let the team know about 18 months before the actual time when we did, which was March 2019.
That's early compared to a lot of other people.
It is early. I've just written a piece on that actually about what is the right time. And I guess for many businesses, there is no perfect time. But actually, I think the team started to get wind of the fact that actually change was afoot. And, suddenly you get suits coming into the office and people go, oh, and I wonder what's going on. So for us, once we'd made the decision to go employee owned, it was like, what's the disadvantage of going public with the team? So, and then we started to say, had we done a trade sale, we'd have probably lost our tax team. They probably wouldn't have wanted a tax team. We'd have lost a lot of our business services team. So for them, it was to my mind, a good news story of we'll keep the business intact. We're a very values-led company, and our fourth value, not that they're particularly hierarchical, is around building for the long term. And it really, when we looked at the pluses and the few negatives there are of employee ownership, for us, a big one was, so we can keep the business intact, we can keep the team intact. Clients, when we started socializing the whole idea of employee ownership with clients, they absolutely loved it. We have quite a young team here. So the idea of clients being able to continue to be looked after by someone had looked after them already for 10 years. And that was the journey. So yeah, we let the team know and then journeyed with them. We produced a document that gave them a timeline through from where we were, looking through the whole legal process up until the day we completed. So yeah, that's what led to it. And it's been a great journey for us.
Yeah, fantastic. There's so many questions I've got coming out of that journey that you guys took. I mean, if we let's just go back a little bit more to that feeling that you had when you saw these other options coming through, like whether that being, what as you as a business owner had spent a lot of time obviously building the team, building these customer conversations or customer relationships. Sorry, what did you see that? Why were the other options not feeling right for you?
I guess you could summarize it in one word, which is culture. And culture and legacy, I would say. So on the culture piece, we have and I guess every probably person you have coming on your podcast would go, we have a unique culture and a special culture. But the nature of businesses that go down the EO route, I do think are special. We've always, as I said, we've always believed in quite wide share ownership, but we've also, we've always shared a lot of information and data with the team. So, they now and before we became employee owned, they get our financials every quarter, and that's, full P&L, cash, all that sort of stuff. So that probably gives you an idea. We do just a little thing, but we've always had generous holidays and other allowances, but we also do a well-being day. So everybody gets a day off a month in addition to their holiday allowance. So that maybe gives you a sense of the type of organization that we are. Very values driven. Our number one priority is people matter. And again, everyone would say, well, surely that's true in every business. But I think if you spoke to the team here, they would say genuinely that they do matter. So in answering your question directly, what we didn't get was almost the opposite of all of that. It was about tax breaks, and it was about high valuation and about earnout. And the more we started drilling into what would life look like in one of those businesses, essentially the name would disappear, half the team would disappear. Most likely clients would be potentially shoehorned into investments that probably weren't as good as the sort of portfolios we're putting together. So a number of levels, clients wouldn't have been, it wasn't even as if they would be maintained at the sort of level they're at now in terms of service and cost within portfolios and things. It would have been a worse quality service for clients. Half the team would have gone. The more we started looking into it, it was like, where is the plus here? There just wasn't any.
So these are probably smart people who are coming to you and offering to buy your business. How are they missing that these things were important to you?
I guess their focus tends to be on the directors of the business. What's in it for the directors of the business? And I think probably for some boards and some owners, if you're the classic widget manufacturer, a manufacturing business, you may take a bit of a different view. But for us, a service-based business, our team is everything. So the focus of the conversations was around just imagine what you can do with all the money. And actually, that really wasn't the driver. We're financial planners, so yes, the overall number was important, but that wasn't the key driver. And then, so I talked a little bit about culture, but then legacy. So I end up with a sum of money, and in 5 years' time, I set the business up in 2001. So we've been going 24 years. And you will know from running a business, there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into that. And what I didn't want to do is look back and it's just a counsel we give our clients at the same time and think, what the hell was all that about? I built this business, and in a relatively short space of time, the name's gone, the ethos has gone, the culture's gone, and everything disappears. And Paradigm Norton is just so much more than that. So eventually, when someone said employee ownership, it was like, once we started to dig into that, it was about protecting the clients. It was about keep retaining the team. It was maintaining the culture and values that we'd already got. We recognized at that time, back in 5 or so years ago, that I always think when you think of employee ownership, there's two elements to it. There's ownership transition and there's leadership transition. So what we did in 2019, I've only just transitioned the CEO role. So up until the 1st of April this year, I've been the CEO, co-founder and CEO. We've just done the leadership transition as well. And I think they're two quite different things. So for us, it ticked all the ownership transition boxes. It allowed us to start progressively. Those that wanted to sell equity were about 80% employee owned. Those that wanted to sell equity into the trust could do so. We had a few people who had only just bought equity, so they retained their equity. And that dealt with that. And then that gave us also space over the last few years to then really focus on leadership transition. And we've just been through a big governance review that's really guided us through the whole process of that. And it's led to some quite significant changes in terms of our governance structure. So I think in our quest to become employee owned, we absolutely wanted to do it right. But I think with the benefit of hindsight, the trust board was too big. There's some lessons we've learned along the way. So we've gone through a bit of a sort of governance recalibration and ended up in a better place now. But that's the journey we've been on, done the governance review, done leadership, got a new CEO in. And that's the journey we've been on, which we wouldn't have been able to do any of that had we just sold out to the highest bidder.
Yeah, I love that. Just the fact that you obviously came into this with such care and respect for the people that you work with that helped you build the business. And it seems like that's been a really common thread throughout. But just when you talked about the ownership transition with 20% you had 20 employees who were shareholders in the company via a few different mechanisms. How did you think about providing them liquidity through that exit scenario? When we had majority shareholders, were you stack ranking, who'd get exit first based on sort of first in, first out? Was it sort of proportional payments all the way sort of through the exit? Yeah. How were you thinking about that?
Do you mean initially before EO came along? Do you mean?
As you were thinking about during the EO transition, and look, I'm not sure if this is the model you use, but the most predominant is using the future free cash flow to then be able to effectively pay down the debt. And I was just wondering, with so many shareholders who are in the business, so it's effectively could be trustees and shareholders, and with also your liquidity there, did you think about potentially subordinating other people's sort of debt for the purchase on the way out? Was it sort of stacked? Hey, look, we're going to pay majority stakeholders first, and then we're going to go down to do minorities after that.
It's very much the latter. So everybody was given the opportunity to sell equity to the trust at the time we became employee owned in March. As I say, we ended up with just under 80%, and that was purely individuals on a personal basis saying, and for me, I partly sold and I partly kept shares. So I've still got shares within the family as well. And the way the payment profile works is essentially, so you transition your equity into deferred consideration, and you're in the deferred consideration queue that gets paid out over a period of time. And the way we pay out the deferred consideration is proportionate to ownership. So whilst I'd massively diluted over time, so on day one, I almost owned 100%. by the time we became employee owned in 2019, I diluted down to 18%. So whatever the proportion is of the ownership that you owned at the time when you became employee owned determines your ranking for deferred consideration. And therefore we've got this sort of payment profile where we pay out deferred consideration every month. Potentially there's a sweep payment at the end of the year if the business has done better than planned. And then in due time, then the minority will want to exercise their put option, and they'll go, right, the DC is now all being repaid. I'd now like to start to exercise my put option. The EOT has a call option. And so if you say, I'd like to sell some of my equity, the EOT, as long as it's got the cash, would go, yes, please, I'd like to buy your equity. And essentially that's the market that we've created. And that seems to be working well at the moment, albeit we became employee owned in 2019, and we all know what happened in 2020 and 2021. So there was a delay in the DC payout that right from the start. But again, I always think most people in this business are financial planners. You have to be able to weather the storm. So it's going to take a little longer than we envisaged, but that's the structure in terms of how the payout will happen.
I love the fact that you built that into the plan. I guess in some other structures and some other setups, it's really sad to hear where these types of payouts or owner really set liquidity schedules really put an undue strain on the business to be able to pay that out, which goes against everything that you were trying to do with the employee owned transition. So yeah, that's awesome to see. So when you think about the leadership transition, you said that you made some changes, some big changes to the governance structure. What did you learn in the first 5 years?
Yeah. Okay. So going back to 2019, I think once we decided we wanted to become employee owned, we definitely didn't want to sort of pay lip service to it. There's a new report that's literally just come out by HMRC and looking at all the tax breaks and tax advantages, and clearly there are some businesses that go into becoming employee owned, and it's a tax driven decision primarily. For us, it was about what was the right thing for the business. And the right thing for the business was to have wide and broad share ownership. So it was on that basis that we went into it. But at the same time, we sought some advice. We had some really good legal advice, but we ended up with a trust board of 9 individuals, and that was really because we wanted to send the message to the team that this is serious. We want to hear your voice. We want to be widely represented around the trust board table. But the challenge is that there wasn't a lot of preparation for the first group of trustees. I think for trustees that are stepping up now, 6 or so years on, there's a whole load of experience and learning that's come as a result of that. But someone puts their hand up and goes, I'll be a director of a Paradigm Norton Employee Ownership Trustee Limited, and then the next thing they get is a letter from Companies House saying you're now a legal director of a company with a fiduciary responsibility, and they haven't a clue what that is. So there was definitely learning on our part around what is the responsibility of a director of a trustee company that has the responsibility of acting in the best interests of all the beneficiaries. It's a big role. So what we've done over time and through the governance review, I think, again, that's on the trust side. On the sort of main board side, the board has sort of built over time. So on day one, it was me as the only executive director, and we had 3 other non-execs for a period of time. When I then appointed the first additional exec director, board meetings were just the 2 of us. It was as much tactical as strategic, and we'd go from one to the other. And gradually, as the business is built, we're now 90 plus people. I think we'd have Exco one day, which is more tactical and operation, and then board the next. But the board members were also on Exco, so it was a bit muddled in terms of where was the proper governance happening. So the governance review that we went through over the last sort of 24 months has really separated out Exco and board. So Exco now, Philippa runs that, the new CEO, and that's where the main action of the business goes. Philippa's meeting weekly, it's rapid, it's fast-paced, and it's about how do we really drive growth and drive the business. And the board, the main board, which I now chair, is predominantly non-execs, saying to Philippa, you said you were going to do this, have you done it? If you have, great. And if you haven't, how can we help you get back to where you need to be? And that's the That's the new dynamic of accountability and support. But it's not a why didn't you do this? Why did you do that? It's very much a supporting accountability. We're all in this together. We want to try and build this business for the sake of the team, for the clients and the beneficiaries. So how do we best do that? That's the sort of governance model. And then on the trust side, we've reduced the main trust board down to 5 people. We've now got 2 independents on the board. So one guy who's quite well known within the EO community in the UK, Ian Hiscock, 26 years at John Lewis, so huge experience in terms of employee ownership. So Ian chairs the board. We have another really great guy, Dave Wilson, who again is an independent. Dave's a chartered accountant, so brings real depth and financial rigor to the trust board. I sit on the trust board as well, but don't chair it. Then we have 2 other sort of senior team members. So that's the trust board structure. So 5 individuals. And then we've just launched what we call partner voice, which in some other businesses would be a sort of just a collective of people trying to sort of represent the best interests of the business at large. So we've got those 4 sort of parts of the governance structure that work together, but I think everybody's really clear on what role they play, and early signs are that that's working really well for us. So that's the governance review, and hopefully within that you can see Philippa's main role now as the CEO. Yes, she'll come to the board and she'll be accountable to the board. She comes to the trust board meeting and she'll give the trust board an update on the strategy and the delivery of the strategy. But her main focus is on driving Exco and making sure that Exco is doing what it should be doing. So that's the current structure.
Yeah, very cool. And does the trust sit on the board as well? Is a trust representative there at all?
Well, I sit on both. And then Ian, who's the chair of the trust board, is a observer on the board, but he's not on the main board. He's not a company's house director, but clearly at the main board level and the trust board level, there's a huge degree to which it's sort of, you could bucket it and call it accountability. So it's really helpful to have Ian sitting in both. And that's the structure, with the main board really responsible for, holding the business to account. And clearly the focus at the trust board level is more around protecting the beneficiaries' interests. So that's how the 2 are sort of slightly differently structured.
Let's dive in. I'd love to dive in a little bit more of the partner voice. So as you're thinking about I love it how you've been thinking, the structure that you've got, a clear delineation between ownership and management. Yeah. How did you bring the partner or employee voice into the day-to-day operations to make them feel like owners?
Yeah, I mean, it's literally, I'm sharing something with you that only the first meeting was yesterday.
Oh, wow.
So the governance review's been a little while in coming, and there are certain, we had to go through a few changes with the articles of the trust board and change of the trust deed to get all this stuff through. So literally, I was meeting with Kim this morning, who's our head of marketing. She chairs the Partner Voice group. And the idea of that group, I mean, there are just projects that have floated up prior to that to the trust board, which are quite big projects. So, the potential of a big office move, those sorts of things, which really do have a big impact with the team if you're going to relocate a big team from one location to another. And actually, when the trust board met, it's got its own business to run. But then suddenly you layer in another big project like that. It was very difficult for the trustees to be able to sort of do justice to all of that. So those projects and sort of through town hall meetings are going to be run through Partner Voice. So there's all sorts of changes that we're bringing on at the moment. So with Philippa coming in as the new CEO, she's been going around the offices doing meeting with all the team, meeting with all the partners, and the clients. And so part of the Partner Voice group yesterday, I understand, was just getting feedback on how that landed. And thankfully, both the client forums and the team forums have gone really well. But it's just trying to hear across 93 people what's going on across the business, what's bubbling up, what are the cultural things that you really like and you don't like, and it's avoiding the obvious sort of stuff that really should be dealt with by the people team or through line management. It's the more structural stuff that really does impact people, where someone might go, I don't know why they're not attending to that. It's something that people start to recognize isn't as it should be. And actually, if there's a collective voice that says, yeah, this isn't as it should be, how do we resolve it? Then Partner Voice really is the forum to be able to address those sorts of things. So it's the material issues that will impact all. We call everybody in the business a partner since becoming employee owned. So it's, what are those partner issues that are either going to drive different behavior? If we're trying to encourage people to think like owners, what are the things that we need to be really on top of that are going to help people behave and think like owners, which is the behavior we're looking for.
Totally. And so how are you addressing that prior to these partner voice groups?
So prior to partner voice, the trustees, because there was 9 of them, would take some responsibility for that. And again, we would have quite wide representation. We have 4 offices, so we'd make sure that we've got a trustee representative in each of the offices. But it didn't happen as seamlessly and as well as it should be. And again, I think just moving to this new structure where that's really their remit, and the remit of the trustees is completely separate. It's more, are we driving revenue, or have we got a happy team? There's some sort of, as you say, clearer delineation between what the trust board should be and are now doing, and the remit responsibility that the partner voice group has got.
Obviously, this new change, this new governance structure is too fresh to understand. But you've obviously been employee owned for coming up to 6 years. I mean, what have you seen as? Firstly, what has been the biggest challenge with the transition?
Yeah, I think in terms of going back to what I was saying earlier, the culture of the business didn't materially change. So when we became employee owned, clearly people get a profit share, which is always welcome and received. But whilst the DC has been repaid, it's a modest profit share. And a few people came to me and said it doesn't feel materially different to how it was. And I think that's the nature of businesses that become employee owned. We didn't ever have that sort of command and control style of leadership. It was always very collegiate. We always got people together. We always shared lots of financial information. So in some respects, there hasn't been, in a business like ours, a lot of material changes. In terms of some of the challenges, I think it's the DC payout is definitely a challenge. So when you've got different stakeholder groups, I should say, across the business, where you've got some people going, I don't know why we're not investing more in growing and building the business. Mm-hmm. At the moment, we've put a hold, for example, on not doing any more acquisitions. We've done acquisitions in the past. They're quite cash hungry. So whilst we've got the DC payout, but at the same time, we're trying to really build organically. So I think that the DC is one. I think speed of communication can be something you need to really watch out for. I think we've addressed that now through the governance review. But we have an inform, consult and approve mechanism built outside the trust document. So we've got what's built into the trustee, but we've also got, when do I, as the main board chair, need to go back to the trust board or to the business to go, we're doing this? Or when do I need to consult with them on it? And actually then when do I need their approval on it? And I think in the early days, there was definitely the potential of things being slowed down. So when you're trying to drive the business forward in quite a nimble way, you have a board meeting, great, we've made a decision, you can crack on. When you become employee owned, and now you've got the trust board, and actually, we're going to do an acquisition. An acquisition now is going to take some cash. We now need the trust board approval. Well, when's the next trust board meeting? Well, it's not for 6 weeks. And so I think making sure you've got the rhythm of meetings working well and the cadence of board meetings and trust board meetings working in harmony. And that just took us a little while to recognize. So now the trust board meeting typically happens about a week after the main board meeting. So I have to be very cognizant in a main board meeting, right, decision's been made, something's come through Exco, board are happy with it. We can now move on to hopefully approval with the trust board. We've now only got a week to wait. So we've just had that, for example. So the trust board have to sign off on the strategic plan and on the profit plan for the next 12 months. So we've just had the May board meeting. Week later, 19th of May, we had the trust board meeting. Both got approved, both done. We lost a week. We didn't really lose a week, but that was the time frame. So I think that's just something you've got to watch for. In the early days, we weren't as good at doing that. I think the other thing maybe is around incentives for the senior team and how you progressively manage that. And we're doing that through enterprise management incentive, issuing options, and then building in some hurdles, which is probably around building enterprise value that triggers the ability for an option. And then they'll form that part of that potential queue down the track for when the first round of deferred consideration has been repaid. People can exercise their option and then realize value because the trust will want to buy their shares. So again, it's just taken us a while to work through that. I think it works extremely well, but that's just another sort of dynamic that we've had to give quite detailed thought to make it work for, as I say, all stakeholders.
Yeah, and also continue to be able to regenerate moving forward. But
exactly.
Okay, so look, that's great in terms of challenges, like, and really gives a clear picture. I mean, I love that it's a really sort of great perspective around that speed of communication, and I think that that's something that makes total sense. But you're probably not going to see that coming in. That need to align the meetings to align with the decision-making process. So,
and I think it's still. I mean, I'm now very involved in the EO community. My role being chair, my day job really is building our presence within the EO community. And in the UK, we've only been doing this stuff since 2014. So there's and in the early days, there wasn't a huge number of businesses going through the whole employee ownership. So, you hit a firm like ours who became employee owned in 2019. We're like one of the older firms. But whenever I go to events and start chatting with other EO businesses, it's like we're making it up as we go along. So, we're building an infrastructure, we're building standards, we're building processes, and it's great. I mean, it's a very collaborative community, which is brilliant. So when you go to EOA events and those sorts of things, there's a huge amount of learning and people prepared to sort of share. We've shared quite a lot around our journey around leadership transition. How do you transition from one CEO to another and do it well, and all of that sort of stuff. It's there's a lot of learning, but we're learning from each other, so it's really positive.
I do love that. No, I think we heard it from when we interviewed the CEO of the EOA, like James Delavin. Like, he talked about the fact that you've seen one EO business. That means you've seen one EO business. That I do like to. I do think that will change as maturity in the infrastructure. In the whole EO economy is going to change too. Like, as we start building these best practices, it's going to make it so much easier for the following companies to be able to plug and play.
Yeah, I think a sort of parallel to that is within my other life and world, which is financial planning. I ended up on the international board called the Financial Planning Standards Board, and that was how do you get 26 countries from around the world to all work to common standards, accepting, for example, the tax treatment of things is different, but even things as simple as continuous professional development, let's just have one standard so everyone's working to a common standard. So if you're passporting a financial planner from the UK to the States or the UK to Australia, wherever, there's common standards. And again, it's something I've been giving thought to within the EO world, because there is so much where people are just doing their own thing. And I think we do need to sort of coalesce around, there are some really good practices out there of how you do it. But the whole thing around when should you tell your team, and when you're going down the EO route, there's actually a lot of areas where common standards coming together, sharing ideas, best practice toolkit would be incredibly helpful. Because we've learned lessons, and I just think, I wish we'd known that 2 years ago. We could have avoided whatever it is, and there is that, and the EOA are doing a great job, and there's other bodies and organisations who are trying to sort of pull that best practice together. But it is early days in the UK in terms of recognising, and then who owns those standards, who would lead, play a part in leading that standard setting body or whatever.
Well, yeah, I guess the rest of the world is loving the example that the UK is providing. I think it's playing a leading role in helping, obviously, the Canadians, the Australians, the Danes, and many others to look at this as a viable transition tool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I know you probably know Graham Nuttall. Graham's doing a phenomenal job as ambassador to EOA, but also just going around other jurisdictions, just banging the drum and explaining the huge benefits of EOA. So an incredibly exciting time to be part of this community. And I think we all have a part to play in building that sort of common body of knowledge, which is what is required if we're going to see this community thrive. And you look at the potential of the numbers coming through. If the stats are right, it's 600 in the UK a year. That's a lot of companies coming through. And if we can help them from the benefit of what we've been through, share good practices and common knowledge, that seems like a really helpful thing to do. Businesses can grow quicker, can take on more people, can avoid some of the problems that we've been through around, how many people do you need on the board? And I think we went too big. I think equally you hear stories of people where they're almost, how many can we get away with? And I don't like that language either. I think if you're going to go into employee ownership, it's not, let's see, let's enjoy the tax breaks, but do them sort of minimal amount you can to be a sustainable business. That's not great and not really what we want to be supporting as a sector.
Yeah, look, as soon as you offer the type of tax breaks that are available over there in the UK, you're always going to find bad actors who are going to find a way to be able to make it happen. So it was great to see some of those changes that they made back in October last year to try to thwart that. But I'd love to go back. I mean, we talked there about a lot of the benefits of EO and for the broader industry. What were the benefits for you, right? And your business? What have you felt over the last 6 years?
I was just asked to do a talk to a load of financial planners, and the sort of overarching title was "Sell Well," and I was talking about what was important to me, and we've touched on it because I think. For me, what was really important and why none of the trade sale opportunities that came our way were vaguely attractive. I think I've never sat back and worked out the hours I've put into this business since 2001. It would be frightening. But there is a huge amount that people never see of evening work, weekend work. It's like 24/7, 7 days a week when you're building a business, and that all adds up to building a business that obviously many entrepreneurs will go, I've built a really special business. And that's the inevitability when you've put that amount of effort into it. But for me, what was really important, because we've actually picked up a number of clients that have come our way as a result of being employee owned. So that's been a really positive thing. But the heartbeat of this business, of Paradigm Norton, is our clients. It's like when people have said, we've built a successful financial planning business, what is it that's really made the difference? And it seems so crazy, but it is just putting clients at the heart of everything we've done. And there was a book that came out over the last couple of years called Unreasonable Hospitality, Will Guidara, brilliant book. Nothing to do with financial planning, but it's about how do you deliver that extraordinary level of care to clients that mean that you're talked about. And that was always the business that I wanted to build. And then you go along, going back to my story of sort of 6 or 7 years ago when we were talking to these businesses, the thing that you really noticed in the conversations or the absence was the word clients. They had little regard for the impact of clients, and they are the lifeblood of this business. So even if I was morally bankrupt and could shoehorn them from what we believe is a really good investment experience into something substandard, clients vote with their feet, and people don't seem to see that. They wouldn't hang around, and so for me, clients was the number one. It was like what was going to work for our clients, and then clearly the team and the wider stakeholder group. So that was first and foremost. So again, it's sort of, you get to 65, you do start to do a bit of sort of pondering on the future. And some of the questions that we ask clients around, as a financial planner is, imagine you're in 5 to 10 years' time, what does good look like? What do you want your legacy to look like? If you only found you got 12 months to live, what would be your biggest regret?
You just got to answer the questions that you ask to every single one of your clients when they walk in the door.
Exactly. And I think, we all did some soul searching around that and just thought, actually, so for me personally, the idea of being able to be paid out over time, see this business under new leadership thrive, see Philippa coming in, doing the amazing stuff she's doing, is like, why wouldn't I want that? That's the perfect outcome for me. And who knows how long I'll continue to be in the business for. I'll continue to chair the board. I've sort of signed a 3-year contract, but I've got to do a good job in delivering over that next 3 years. Who knows beyond that 3-year tenure? So for me personally, I'm very much at that part at that stage of life and in my journey, in the business's journey, of thinking the biggest job I've had over the last couple of years is to park Paradigm Norton in a safe harbour that I know, if we do it right, will lead to more success for the future in whatever that looks like. And it'll be different to the success that I've brought over the last 20-something years. The way Philippa will do it will be different to the way I do it. So for me, it's a huge personal satisfaction, a sense of achievement, of feeling that, I've got the business to nearly 100 people. Philippa is significantly younger than me. She's got a huge amount of energy to just really drive the business forward. And she was presenting to the board the other day and saying, this is what I've done since I joined on the 1st of April. This is the plan. This is my 90-day plan. I'm thinking, my goodness me, I think I work at a fast pace. She works super fast. And, it's just been amazing to see the stuff that she's nailed, the new ideas she's got, that new lease of energy into the business is exactly what's required. So, for me, it's been a great outcome. And I'm, totally a fan of EO, totally supportive, and wouldn't want to go back and do anything differently.
Okay, that's awesome. Now, if I was asked the same question of your new owners, the partners, all these trust members, what would they say about sort of the what have been the benefits for them?
Well, I guess fundamentally, and it's probably something that we laboured a little bit when we became employee-owned in 2019, but it's not something people often think about. When we became employee-owned, I got a few of the team to stand up, and actually, for our tax team, for example, if a larger financial planning business had bought Paradigm Norton, the likelihood is that they probably wouldn't have wanted to keep the tax team. So it would have forced redundancies, and we would, the business that I thought we'd built would have been pretty well decimated. But for someone joining now, seeing an employee in business, you can't really go, you're lucky to have a job. But that is the reality, that employee ownership enables you to retain the amazing team that you've got. In terms of those coming in, I think the profit share is great. We talk about information, influence, and reward. But I do recognise you have to hold those three things in tension in the early stages of being an employee-owned, because the profit share isn't huge. We're not paying tens of thousands of pounds out to every owner. But what they do get is the information and the influence, and the ability, information in terms of, we are very transparent with how we run the business. If the business isn't going well, we hold our hands up and we go, look, it's either we haven't done something well, or the market hasn't done something well, or we're just economically, it's not a great time for the business. We need to hunker down, and this is what we need to do. But in the good times, we'll also say, this is the profit plan at the start of the year. We're now ahead of plan or whatever. So they get a lot of information, but not just financial information. Whenever we have a board meeting, I've always fed back on the board meeting. So when I was CEO, I used to run a thing called Partner Huddle, which was one every month I used to do, get the whole team online. We say, right, last week we had a board meeting. This is what we discussed. We've just appointed a new director. We've just done this. We've just done that. So they get a whole load of information. They have influence. So Partner Voice is a great opportunity for a group across the business at all levels, all grades of seniority, to be able to say, actually, we want to hear from you. We want you to play a part in the running of this business. And they genuinely do feel they've got a voice and can influence what goes on. And I think that's, it is that whole aspect of them being treated like partners. And yes, you are an owner in the business. You're an indirect owner in the business. And therefore, yes, you haven't got a share certificate, but you are an owner in this business. And therefore, you can impact the business. But I think a lot of what you drive through when you become employee-owned is just what I would call good business practice. Sometimes when I hear employee owners talk about, this is what you get by being employee-owned, you could get all of that without being employee-owned. If you empower your team and you share information and you give them a sense of purpose and a sense of belonging, and you involve them in leadership, and you've got good promotion opportunities, and you do good train, all of that good stuff that just goes into building a good business, you've just got a little bit more, I guess. And then at the end of the year, if things have done well, the profit share starts to go up, people to get a tax-free profit share. That's just a bit more of a sort of tangible sense of, yes, we were all in this together, but actually it isn't just the hierarchy of the main directors or the owners of the business that benefited. We've all benefited.
Look, that's amazing. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Like there's obviously so many benefits there that are part of the EO journey, but I think also that point you sort of mentioned at the end, like this is just a great tool to promote great leadership, like and great management. It just sort of makes it sort of more intrinsically linked. I think I've heard it before that like this is, well, actually, sort of from a prior life, like that's how I've seen sort of amazing change management done, has with them in this great stakeholder engagement. But then, like, and also, but then there's actually, there's so much more sort of a shared incentives now in the EO model, makes it all a lot easier. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time. But look, before I let you go, Barry, what I'd like to do is just ask you a fast round of questions. I'm just going to ask you 3 quick questions and you offer a quick response. How does that sound? Okay. Who is the leader that you most admire in employee ownership?
In employee ownership, probably Graham Nuttall. I mean, he's the guy you need on your podcast. He's the founding father. I mean, when I started looking at employee ownership, a lot of firms approached us to say we could act for you. We found Theo Fisher, we found Graham, and I thought, blimey, this is the guy that sort of wrote the rule book. So I really admire Graham for what he's done and what he continues to do for the community.
Yeah, he's been a great resource for me, and also we're hoping to get him on the pod soon. What is your favorite resource on employee ownership?
So loads, but I've just been reading a really good book, which I have in front of me, and one of your former guests, Simon Morton. So I've just been reading his book. I've just put out a post on LinkedIn today. And in the run-up to EO Day on the 20th of June, I'm doing a post every day on employee ownership. And I've just sent one out this morning referencing, I love Simon's talk around from boss to benefactor. I love that expression. So that's what today's LinkedIn post is about. So really enjoyed Simon's book. I mean, there's loads of great material out there on employee ownership, but a lot of it is a bit of a repeat of, this is how you structure the trust board, and this is how the legals work. I think Simon's book is just some practical, good, solid advice from someone who's been there, done that. So that's the top of my pile at the moment.
Yep. And then the final question is, what would you say to a business owner who's sitting on the fence regarding a transition to employee ownership?
My immediate inclination, because you wanted a rapid fire response, was go for it. But I think my advice would be step back, seek really good advice from people that have been there, done that. So don't rush into something. Don't be driven by, there's an autumn statement, there's a budget coming up. What happens if the CGT rules change? Step back, make sure you're making the decision right. I think employee ownership has got a huge lot going for it, but it's not for every business. And I recognize that in some of the firms I've chatted with. If the style of your leadership or the business is command and control, I'm not sure starting to share the leadership of the business with a broader team is going to land well. So make sure it's right, but seek good professional advice and go a bit slow into the decision.
Okay, that's fantastic. So Barry, if people want to follow your journey, you talked about posting daily in the lead up, where can people find you?
So probably on LinkedIn is probably a good place. We're building out a section on our website, which is all around employee ownership. But again, what I'm not going to be putting there, it's going to be around culture. So I'm going to be launching a podcast. So who knows, I might be giving you a call, Andy, and getting you on my podcast. So that's the plan. But LinkedIn and the Paradigm Norton website probably at the moment. But really keen to share information and thoughts around how we build the community together. So keen if anyone wants to reach out, my emails on the web. Be great to hear from both.
Fantastic, and I can put that link as well for people, which is going to be in the show notes. Barry, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your really thoughtful approach and sort of how in terms of sort of going and finding the right structure to make this a success for everyone. Really, really appreciate it. And thanks for joining us on the Alternative Exit.
You're very welcome. Great to be here and share some of our journey. All the best.
Cheers. Thanks. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to continue learning about employee ownership as an alternative exit, head across to abettermonday.me for additional links and resources. You can also make sure to subscribe or follow along in your favorite podcast app, and be sure to leave us a 5-star review.